You're listening to Shoe In, covering the ins and outs of all things footwear, from sneakers to heels, loafers to slippers, and every type of shoe in between. Brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear.
Hello there, Shoe and Show listeners. Thanks for joining us for another exciting edition of the world's greatest shoe business podcast. I'm your host, Matt Priest, and I'm very excited because my partner in crime, Sandi Mines, who runs FFANY Market Weeks in New York City, had a phenomenal conversation with two style influencers as it relates to what are the styles that are out there, what's upcoming in 2025 as it relates to footwear. We have December Market Week coming just next week, and you might already be listening to this episode while you walk the streets of New York. So with that in mind, Sandi, tell us who you talked to and why you think it's critically important for those who are tracking footwear trends.
Great. I was really excited to have Kendall Becker on the Market Trend Watch and Nikara Johns from Footwear News to share a little bit about what's to come for fall and winter 2025. They did a great job of summing up the trends for women's and men's and sneakers and comforts and fashion. It was just phenomenal to hear. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. And before we get started, before we roll the tape, I will say that, Sandi, you hold your own. Nikara and Kendall are awesome in their own right, but you keep us straight here in the four walls of FDRA because, you know, not all of us are that fashion inclined as you are. So we appreciate you doing that for us, particularly at FDRA.
That's great. It was a wonderful conversation with them.
All right, let's roll the tape.
Hello, everyone. I am excited about this Market Trend Watch 2025. We will be talking about what's coming up for FFANY Market Week on December 2nd through 6th in New York City. I have with me today two special guests to help me walk through their takes on what's to come for fall and winter trends next year. So first, I'd like to say hello to Kendall Becker, Fashion and Beauty Director and an amazing style watcher. Welcome, Kendall.
Hi, everybody. Excited to chat.
And also today, I will also be welcoming Nikara Johns, Senior Editor of Footwear News, who I've known for a very long time, and I'm really excited to get your take.
Yes, thank you for having me.
So let's jump in today with what's to come for 2025. I'm really excited about some of the trends that we put together. Taking a quick look at this slide here, I'd love to get your take on this, Nikara, to talk a little bit about the mule and loafers. What's to come?
Yeah, so as you see, there's a lot of trends and styles that you'll see in 2025, including the loafer. That's not going anywhere. I think you're showing a couple here, and you're seeing it in a different way. Maybe it's not so straightforward. Maybe there's embellishments, shearling, different colors. But I still think also you're keeping with neutrals as well. Nothing too crazy. But I mean, in ballet flats, I think that is something that's not going anywhere, as we know with the Alaya mesh ballet. And Tory Burch also just relaunched her Riva flat, which was huge back in the 2000s. And I think it will be big again. So it's exciting.
That's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing that jumps out to me is this overarching trend of nostalgia. So really looking back at a lot of these classic trends, and it has a lot to do with what's happening within ready to wear as well. We've been seeing a lot of trends spark up from the 60s, 70s, and even a little bit of the 80s playing into here. But immediately when we think of that, you think of the Mary Jean. It's very classic. It's classy, feminine. Same thing with the ballet flat and the loafer as well. And I think, this has started to come back into the zeitgeist. We're seeing this grow a lot with this fall. But as we look into 2025, there's a lot of room to be playing around, expanding our color palettes. And as you mentioned, embellishments is just so huge right now. I think even looking at a lot of these pictures, that the embellishment is really what's making it and taking a classic ballet flat or loafer to the next level. And that novelty is still bordering it into an emotional buy and not just, it's a practical ballet flat, but it still feels really fun and special.
That's great. I love this idea of nostalgia, and the Mary Jane just has had so many different iterations. I see it on a pump and I see it flat. I see it it could be really fancy or casual. So I love that style. I'd love to hear a little bit about what you all think about sneakers these days. I mean, everyone's still talking about the fact that you can wear sneakers day and nighttime, but they definitely look a little different, right? We had many, many years of the big, chunky sneaker, and I think that's changed in terms of the silhouette that we're looking at. So, Nikara, do you want to chime in on that one?
Yeah, I think just to go off of this retro trend, you're seeing a lot of brands tap into their archives and they're showing these heritage styles, whether it's like the soccer shoes, the Samba, I think will continue on. The Puma Speed Cat was the top or one of the top sneakers this past quarter, and I think that will continue on. And then this low profile look. And I mean, I still think you can't go wrong with a white, clean sneaker, and I think that's popping up in the men's looks as well. But yeah, I mean, I still love the Samba personally, and I think all those different colorways will just keep growing, and I still think people are shopping for them.
Yeah, I think looking back almost a year or two ago, there was a big separation of this is your fashion sneaker and then this is your utility running sneaker. And I feel like now what we're seeing in the market is these blending together, that you're seeing more of people wearing that classic runner, even out to dinner or to appointments or whatever it might be, like a New Balance 530, for example, that used to feel such like, you're wearing that one to work out. Now you're seeing that more as a fashion item as well. And it doesn't have to be so extreme, really chunky sneaker to give it a fashion lens.
Yeah, and you'll see the brands are collaborating like On and Loewe or Solomon and Mason Margiela. And I think Ganni and New Balance put out shoes today. So they're crossing over and you can wear them for really any occasion, not just clearly working out anymore.
I love that. And I love that, some designers and some creators are taking a whole new look at what the sneaker market is and how to marry sneakers with pumps. And we saw Sarah do it with sneaks. So I'd love to hear what your impression on that is, Kendall.
Yeah, I think they're very unique. To each their own. I think that there definitely is a consumer set who is interested in this type of style. I think personally, there's a way to do a really comfortable, well-made heel. So I don't know if I totally see the gap there that needs to be filled, because it's a great structured heel should give you that comfort already. So I don't know if you really quite need to combine the sneaker, but I do see the mindset. I think it's creative. There's a lot that's happening within the hybrid shoe that I think we'll talk about in a little bit, especially when it comes to men's. So I see the mindset and where it's coming in.
I know you guys have been giving sneaks the launch of the year this year, and that's exciting. And I think you're right. It's just a new way of looking at it, right? So maybe everyone is not there yet, but I see a lot of excitement and a lot of buzz, and it's nice to have some creativity in that category. So I appreciate that. What about boat shoes? I mean, I've been hearing that boat shoes have been coming back for a long time, and I know this is probably not the market, we're talking about fall and winter. But I just have to ask, have you been noticing boat shoes everywhere? And it's just been me that I've missed it a little bit, but I've been hearing that it's coming back and so many times. What's your take on that, Nikara?
Yeah, I am seeing it. I don't think to the extent where it's like this huge trend, but I still think you could see like some fashion girls are styling it with, maybe it's an oversized look and it's not so much this preppy, skinny jean type look that was really popular again in the 2000s. So I think there's a way to elevate the boat shoe and make it, I guess, more on the fashion end of it. And I think Sperry's does a really good job at collaborating with even other brands to kind of elevate it. I think it's still a classic shoe. So I think regardless that it doesn't go anywhere when it's an iconic look.
That's right.
So I think we'll see it.
And sometimes you'll see it starting also with men. They tend to love a great boat shoe. But back when Sperry had a moment a few years ago when it had a resurgence, I was there for it. I love it. I love the comfort of it. I think it's really fun. And I think there's a lot of great ways to do collaboration. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to continue on I know we talked a little bit about loafers and Mary Janes. They're not going anywhere. They're just being restyled. And I love the mule because it's so easy. And I think it could be really chic. And every single designer is doing a version, including Dior and Loewe and all of them. Gucci, everyone's doing the Row. Obviously, this image is from the Row. But I did want to ask about shearling before we move on, because I feel like shearling is everywhere. I mean, I'm showing it here in the loafer, but of course it's in the sneaker, it's in the winter boot, it's obviously in the winter boot, but it's just in every category. Have you noticed that? Is that going to continue on for 2025?
Absolutely. I think it's a big evolution standpoint. We're really seeing it a lot right now. Of course, as you mentioned, within a sneaker, within a mule, and then also within ready to wear. This is really picking up, looking at Trendalytics. We track a Google search and e-commerce data, and we are just seeing this resonate with the consumer across the board. So with that being said, of course, when a trend peaks a little bit too much in one season, we always have to be a little wary about how we're going to approach it the following year. But that's really where that evolution and the creativity comes into play of knowing, hey, that she really loves this, but maybe next season we're playing it with the way it's showing up in the trim, or it's a different coloration, or instead of it a true shearling, maybe it's a different way to approach a faux fur sort of look. So I think just keeping it in mind with that caveat, but it's definitely a fun one that I think will stick around and is going to continue to resonate.
I love it. I love shearling. I think it's a fun way to marry the outdoors, into fashion. So I'm here for it. I do want to hit big topic of boots, because I know we've had kind of up and down waves in terms of how strong boot season is, and everyone's really excited about it. Nikara, tell me what we're looking at here in terms of riding versus Chelsea, slouchy, designer, fashion. Share your thoughts.
Yeah, what I'm most excited about, I think, is the slouchy boot. You saw that a lot on the Paris runways it's for spring 25, but I do think for fall, you'll see it, and I think you're going to see it during FFANY Market Week. I think it's just a fun update to the boot, and riding boots are also, I think, going to be huge again. We saw that in September, I believe, on the runways, but I do think the riding boot is going to be here to stay, and something to get in your closet for sure, because you can't really go wrong with the riding boot either.
I totally agree. I think the riding boot is definitely one to watch, and seeing it this time around, it feels a little bit more updated and modern, taking a more minimalistic lens. Like it feels very, like the Row. It looks like almost like channeling that same thing as the mule, where it's a more minimalistic, almost feels a little futuristic as well. So I think we're seeing an update. So it's not so much as preppy, almost blending that Chelsea boot with the riding boot, where it's a bit of a wider then it's sticking right to the calf. So I'm interested to see how that plays out. And I think what's interesting about the riding boot and the Chelsea boot is that you can really tweak those little details to make it fit for your customer. And anything that's able to be personalized for different consumer profiles is going to give you longevity and feels good within those sales investments. So definitely one to be watching and continuing on to play with.
I'm curious if the riding boot and the Chelsea and the slouchy boot are going to be replacing the Western boot. What do you think about that, Nikara?
It's something I always think about when I'm going to previews and looking at people's collections, because you'd be surprised, there still is always a Western boot. And I'm like, I'll ask, is this still, on trend? Does your consumer still want it? And I think now it's almost just, if it makes sense with your brand, it's a core item to have. And I think it's, again, another core item to have in your closet. And I don't think Americana is going anywhere. And I think there's ways to do it. So maybe it's a little more subtle for fall. And maybe it's focused on just cool stitching or a little stacked heel. And maybe it's not so embellished. I think it depends on the season. But I think you could really wear like a beautiful, like that's clearly an understated Western boot. So I think it's still here. Maybe not over the top like Coachella type season, but I think it's not going anywhere.
I think that one is a great example too of trend fatigue, because it was so strong during, of course, Coachella season and spring. And then we had the Beyonce concert, the Taylor Swift Eras tour. So she was really getting to wear that style a lot. So come around fall, we actually did really see this die down within the search numbers and sellout numbers within the Trendalytics platform. So definitely the interest saw a little bit of a dip, but Nikara, to your point, I think it's a staple. And I think playing with something like the stitching or a more subtle embellishment is the way to keep it going into next year.
Again, I've seen also going back to the comfort levels of the mule. I put on this screen the Boston, the clogs, the slippers that are so popular. This is not men's or women's. I say it's, for everyone. But I love the trend of the fact that, people are wearing just comfortable slip-ins, clogs, ultra suede, supple shoes, just all the time, all over. And I think that every brand has a different version. So I'd love to hear a little bit about what you think about that, Kendall. Is that going to continue for 2025?
Absolutely. I think this idea of comfort is so key right now. Even looking at this from a macro lens of all the different trends that are really resonating with her, like the riding boot, the mule, the Bostons, all these different things, every commonality is comfort. And so I think, as I mentioned too, what always really resonates and feels good with investment is something that can be adapted brand by brand to still allow them to give their own signature approach, but it's also something that's comfortable and is going to give her longevity in her wardrobe. And that's something I always say too when I'm talking to my clients is this something that she wants to put on in the morning? If it's a comfortable item and she's, it's Monday morning, she's dragging to the office, isn't too excited about it, she's going to reach for that comfort item. And especially if you can do it in an elevative way, as we're seeing these evolve, that it's not just a really casual shoe anymore, but it's being updated with different fabrications, different embellishments, and all of that. It's a recipe for success.
I agree. And I'd love to hear about your take on two topics that I don't want to spend too much time on. I know we have a limited amount of time today and I want to keep it moving, but I'd love to hear about just your thoughts on color for fall and winter 2025. Are we going with bright hues? Are we going with earth tones? I know burgundy and red were like we're everywhere and still is everywhere right now. But for 2025, what are you looking forward to? Nikara, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and you mentioned, I think that berry type color has been really big for this fall. And just actually separately, I think the print, like leopard print, animal print, is definitely something that's going to be here. I just came back from Copenhagen, and like everyone knows that all the girls there are really in style and the Scandi cool girl look. And you'd be surprised, there was so much animal print, but it was very understated with just hints of it. And I think that is going to be something to continue into 2025. And something I would personally do, whether it's a leopard loafer and you're wearing, all black and nothing too loud. But I think it's a great thing to do with your style and especially with your shoes.
Yes, I love the next to neutrals. So thinking, it's not black, but what's close to it? So seeing navy resonate, especially more of a gray toned navy, as you mentioned here, that's super cool, to a steel blue. A really rich spiced cocoa is so great. And then like a very rich olive as well. So not thinking of it super washed, make sure that these do feel rich and saturated, but they are a next to neutral. So it's something, again, that can hit both markets of somebody who likes a little splash of color, but someone who also is a bit more minimalistic. And I think that also is goes off of how much that burgundy did resonate this fall, that we're going to see that theme continue to play out in new shades.
I love that. Let's talk about the trends for men. And it's women. I see this blending into women's trends too. It's not specifically for men, but the men are exploring a little bit more with some of their loafers and some of their silhouettes that they're wearing and their sneakers. They're being a little bit more adventurous, and then also with their Crocs and their clogs and things like that. So I'd love to hear what your take on this is, Nikara.
Yeah, I think you're going to see, we mentioned it earlier, kind of like this reworked loafer, and I think that's definitely carrying on with men. There's going to be like a twist to the popular, like just black and white type loafer that men wear. And it's not just going to be like a black penny loafer. I think you'll see different takes on it. And I think it's fun. I think that's exciting. And then there's also looks at flats. Men are wearing flats, and it's not a loafer. I think they have their own version of the ballet flat. So I think if you are looking to add something to your closet, that's definitely a way to go. And I'm hoping we'll see it in more contemporary brands too, and not just luxury.
Yeah, overall takes, I'm seeing a bit of an extreme happening here. So going off of that ballet flat or really sleek loafer idea, I think we're seeing this more modern minimalistic trend also happening within men's. But also on the other side, I feel like they're playing a lot with volume. You can even see across the board here in a lot of our photos, we're seeing more with thicker upper or thicker soles happening. And then different creative ways to be achieving that. And I think that's something that we're not so much seeing within the women's market and is more so focused within men. So that's just an interesting one to watch.
That's great. I love this. I think it's a bit more fun and exciting for men. You know, there's a lot more to offer. There's a lot more color and silhouettes and styles, and the short boot is so cool. So I'm excited for the season to come. Is there anything I missed? Anything that you're looking forward to seeing for 2025?
I mean, this is talking about spring, but I just think it's top of mind because we didn't see it, or we saw it not too long ago. And I think it's the flip-flop. So I think that's just something to be excited about. You're going to be seeing a lot of thong sandals and flip-flops. So that's something to look out for. And then also just for like fall, I think classic moto boots, we didn't really touch on, but I do think that is something that will be here and to keep an eye out for.
Yes, I'm going to echo you on that elevated flip-flop. That was one of my favorite footwear trends from the spring-summer 2025 runway. So I am so excited to be seeing that come to life in this new year. And then also looking at the classic pump and the classic slingback, just that beautiful pointed toe, feels very powerful 80s vibe. So I'm excited to see that come back. I love the classics. I think that'll be great.
Great. I think we've covered a lot. We've given the retailers and brands something to look at and something to consider and talk about. And I just appreciate your views and, you know, your styling tips and all that. So thank you for coming and joining me today.
Thanks, Sandy.
Thank you for having me.
Shoe In has been brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. For information about FDRA, visit fdra.org.